gonna be a different year. This is not the place for fear. I've got a job
All right,
to
guys. Well, welcome.
do.
Happy Friday, everyone. Today, we're gonna keep it simple again. So, Jocelyn, we're gonna talk about those two chapters you read, and we're gonna be talking about Friday the 13th and poor Max and Kevin and how awful their Friday the 13th was. And then we're gonna be going right on and reading chapter 14. So, let's jump right in, using our questioning strategy to talk about last night's reading. So Casey, right now, finish up what you're doing there. All right, and let's turn our attention first to chapter 12. Okay? You okay? All right. So where do Max and Kevin go in chapter 12? What starts in chapter 12 for these guys? Anyone on line 2, you guys can raise your hand when you want to answer. They go to school. School starts in chapter 12. That's the big thing that happens. All right? And in this chapter, we learn that Max is going to have all of his classes with who? Okay, raise your hand. Max is going to have all of his classes with who, Michelle? Kevin. All right. Now, that means that Max is no longer going to be in the LD classes. He's now going to be in what type of classes? Sophia?
He calls them the genius classes.
Good, the genius classes. And what happens in class with Max and Kevin? We get to experience one of their classes with them. Sophia?
Max overhears people in the hallway talking about them and whispering, "Look at the freak show," and "I'm gonna be sick."
Okay, but what was my question? What happens in one of their classes? Not the hallway. Tell me about what happens in class. But you're right. She brings up a good point. The name calling, everything pretty much starts right on the first day of school with these guys. But what happens in class? Michelle?
Kevin gets up on Max's shoulders and then they start chanting "Freak the Mighty."
Good. They start chanting. And so they cause a big, giant disruption in class. They're in the middle of class. Kevin is on Max's shoulders. All right? And they're chanting out, "Freak the Mighty, freak the mighty." What do we learn about Max and the way that he behaves in class? What does Max not do in class, Jocelyn? He doesn't talk. Max does not talk in class. And what happens because they cause a scene in class?
They go to the principal's office.
They get sent to the principal's office. So Freak the Mighty gets sent to the principal's office. Jocelyn? No, they don't get detention. That's okay. Anybody know what happens when they get sent to the principal's office? See?
He's saying big words from out of the dictionary that the principal does not know, and
Yeah, he starts using big words. So he's not lying, Kaya. He uses all these big words and this big explanation. And essentially, Casey, you just told us, he gets them out of trouble. He talks his way out of getting into trouble. So, just so you guys know, he wasn't lying in the principal's office. He just happened to know big words, and he convinced the principal, Mrs. Addison, to not give them any detention or anything. Okay, so, chapter 13, American Chop Suey. What is the setting of chapter 13? Jane? What's the setting? What is it? Part of it is in the lunchroom.
it's Friday the 13th in school.
Good. Friday the 13th, we're in school. So, Jane, you were right. We are in the lunchroom for part of it. And Max opens up where... No, we didn't get any. Max opens up by talking about Friday the 13th. What do you guys know about the date Friday the 13th? What's it supposed to be, Jocelyn?
It's supposed to be bad luck.
Okay, it's supposed to be bad luck. All right. So... what happens to Max on Friday the 13th? What happens to Max on Friday the 13th? Michelle?
The principal calls him down to the office, and he might be able to see his dad again.
What's the word that she started to use? It starts with a P. Don't shout it out. Don't shout it. I'm going to call him Cheyenne. Not patrol. Parole. Good correction. Parole. The word parole came up. Now, we talked a little bit about what that word meant. We never even really got to hear what the principal had to say to Max. Because what did Max do as soon as he heard the words father and parole?
Well, he covered his ears and screamed, "Not gonna hear it, not gonna hear it."
So, in your own words, he did what?
He was acting crazy.
Thank you. See, that's your own words. He starts acting crazy. I use the words he freaks out. He freaks out. He starts acting crazy in the principal's office. All right? We never get to actually hear what the message was, but we heard your dad, parole. Max immediately freaks out and he says, I don't want to hear it. What happens to Kevin on Friday the 13th? What happens to Kevin on Friday the 13th? Zoriana, really loud.
He chokes on his food.
Say it again.
He chokes on his food and he has to go to the hospital.
He chokes on his food and he has to go to the hospital. How does he get to the hospital? Cheyenne? Ambulance. So it's not like one of the nurse drives him to the hospital. The ambulance comes to school and he has to leave school in an ambulance.
And that's not the way you want to leave school.
That is definitely not the way you want to leave school. So now let's turn it over to you guys and your level 2 questions. So, raise your hand. You guys all should be open to your kid blog. I even started posting up some fun questions on here for you guys. So, you can see I did 2 actually myself. I got one right there. I got another one right there. What are your questions though? So, raise your hand. You guys also can raise your hand. Let's start with Kaya. Read it really loud, Kaya, and then if the class can't hear you, I'll say it.
What do you think Killer Kane's request was? Explain why you think that.
All right, what do you think Killer Kane's request is going to be? All right, and again, if you want to answer online, raise your hand. I'm going to call on Michelle for you, Kaya. What do you think the request is, Michelle?
I think the request is to see Max because Killer Kane hasn't been able to see his son.
Okay.
I don't know how many years, but 2 years.
All right, so the request is he wants to see Max. Sophia, what do you think the request is?
I'm going with Michelle, and I also have a question.
Well, let's answer Kaya's question first. What do you think Killer Kane's request is?
I think his request would be to spend time. Well, I think his request would be to spend time with his son for a little bit.
Okay. How about you, Mila? What do you think Killer Kane's request is? Unmute yourself.
You're still muted. Still muted.
Yeah, you're still muted.
I think Killer Kane's request is either to help Max and try to get him well or to see him.
Okay. I missed the first part, but you also agree that he might want to see Max.
Want me to say the first part again?
Sure.
To get him out of jail.
Okay. All right. Let's go to another question now. Good question from Kaya. Let's go to one here in the class. Parker.
Okay. If you were Max, what would you do if your dad had a request for you?
Okay. If you were Max, how would you react to a request? All right. Start here with Sophia.
I would probably freak out because you never know what your dad might do because he was in prison.
Okay.
And he's a killer.
Jocelyn?
I would see him. I mean, yeah, I would see him.
Oh, all right. Anyone else? Noah.
Why do you think Max would...
Noah, hold on. Noah, we're answering the question. If you were Max and your dad had it, what was the question? Can someone repeat it?
If you were Max, what would you do if your dad had a request for you?
If you were Max, what would you do if your dad had a request for you? That's what we were answering.
I would want to hear just what it is.
All right, you'd want to hear what it is. Okay, good. All right, let's go on to Casey. You had a question. What's your question, Casey? But you know what it is. What's your question? But no, dude, yours was the same as mine. You and I, we were thinking exactly alike yesterday. Question.
Do you think it was a good idea for Max to be in Judy's class? classes with Freak. Explain.
Very good. So, do we think it's a good idea for Max to be in the genius classes? Sophia?
I think it would be a great idea for Max to be in the genius classes with Freak because not only does he get to spend more time with each other's back
Okay.
when they get picked.
Michelle, you answer the question.
I think Max should be in the genius classes because if he was in the LD classes, he wouldn't be able to see Kevin. He would be able to see Kevin while it's for after school,
Okay.
and Kevin can help him with work.
All right, I'm glad you added that last. Okay, maybe Max is going to be more tempted to just cheat because the work's really hard. Jocelyn?
Well, I don't think he should go back to the LA classes. I think he should go to like the regular classes again
Okay.
instead of going to the genius classes.
And I like that because that really shows that you're thinking. All right? That shows, you know what? LD class or the genius class, you're like saying, hey, Mr. Trumbull, Casey, you're forgetting. There's always the regular classes too. So again, that shows a level of thinking right there. Parker?
I think it's a good idea for him to be in the classes with Freak, the genius classes, because Freak, like you said in the chapter, Freak kind of helps explain things to him.
Okay. All right. Let's do a couple more questions before we start to read. So this is what I want to do. I'm going to turn to my second question that I wrote, guys. Because no one's talking about chapter 13. So here is my question for chapter 13. Who had the worst Friday the 13th? Max or Kevin? Explain why you think that way. We know what happened to Max. We know what happened to Kevin. Who had the worst Friday the 13th? Steven, who do you think it was? Unmute yourself.
I think it was Kevin.
Good. Tell us why you think that.
I think it was Kevin because, like, what if you choked on food and you had to go to the hospital? Like, what if it got, like, stuck in your throat?
Okay.
And, like, it would feel funny.
Yeah, it would be awful. All right, Sophia, who had the worst Friday the 13th?
I would go with Max because Max and Kevin are best friends, and if he lost Kevin, that would be like the end of the world for him.
Okay. Michelle.
I think Kevin had the worst Friday the 13th because he choked on food and he had to leave school in an ambulance, and that's not the way it was.
Okay. Anyone at home? Anyone else at home want to answer? How about you, Noah? Who do you think had a worse Friday the 13th?
Max,
Tell me why.
because, well, first of all, I don't really know how to say he was, like, scared or something to hear about what his father had,
Mm-hmm.
like his request.
Okay. This is where we are. Let's start our reading for today. What you guys are going to need is your book and your graphic organizer. All right. We're now ready to start with chapter 14. So everyone at home, take out your books, open to chapter 14. Cross my heart and hope to die. Okay. Chapter 14. Cross my heart and hope to die. I'm right. Graham lets me stay home the next day because Freak is getting out of the hospital. And I'm right on the front step when the fair Gwen pulls up in her car. Freak is riding in the back. You can barely see him in the window. And he's got this big grin that makes me feel like everything is going to be okay. The way everybody keeps saying. I go, is it okay if I carry him inside? And the fair Gwen says, of course. He has to rest, she says. He stays in the house until I say different. Is that understood? In his room, Freak is right away ordering me around. Bring me this and go do that. And you'd never guess he's been sick. A minor incident, he says, easily corrected by biogenic intervention. You mean that robot stuff? Freak goes, shh. The fair Gwen must not know of the plan. The very idea strikes fear into her heart. Well, it is pretty scary, I say. Getting an operation to give you a whole new body? I'm not scared, Freak says. I'm looking forward to it. So when does it happen? Freak gets this faraway look and he says, I'm not sure. Dr. Spivak, she's my doctor, she says maybe a year or two. But how come you need a new body, I ask? How come you can't just stay like you are? Freak shakes his head like he knows I'm not smart enough to understand. No one stays like they are, he says. Everybody is always changing. My problem is I'm growing on the inside, but not the outside. He doesn't want to talk about it anymore, which is fine with me. And in another couple of days, everything is back to normal. And we're going to school like always. And everything is going real good. Until Christmas vacation. When, if you'll excuse the expression, all hell breaks loose. So, the setting. We've now fast forwarded from October, Friday the 13th, to
Christmas break.
Christmas time. All right? Freak gets out of the hospital. All right? And again, what do we hear? Freak mentions his operation. What was your question, Jocelyn?
I was going to say, what if the black cat was the warning about this stuff?
Maybe. Maybe it was an omen. Okay. So here we are. And if Max uses the expression, all hell breaks loose, are we expecting positive things to be happening or negative things? Negative. And this is what I was mentioning to you guys. The conflicts are really going to ramp up right here. In our plot, we're moving, Casey, towards something called the climax. The most intense part of the story for our heroes. All right? We're not there yet, but these conflicts are going to get much more serious. I'm in the down under, trying to get the stupid wrapping paper to cover the stupid presents I got for Graham and Grim, when this shouting starts upstairs. Understand, Grim never yells at Graham. Not that I can even remember. And Graham, well, the worst thing that she ever does is cry when she's mad. But somebody sure is yelling up there. And so I sneak up the stairs, and I don't even have to put my ear to the door. That's how loud it is. Over my dead body, you will! That's Graham yelling, and her voice is big and full of tears. Grim's voice isn't nearly as loud, and I open the door a crack to hear whatever it is that's made Graham so mad at him. I have an obligation, he is saying. A man has to protect his family. Not with a gun, Graham yells. Not in this house. I won't have it. I can't stand it. How could they do this? How could they? He fooled them, Grim is saying. Just like he fooled Annie. Just like he fooled us once upon a time. Never again, though. That man tries to set foot in this house, I aim to shoot him. No guns, Graham says. You don't know about guns. Of course I do. I was in the army, wasn't I? That was 30 years ago. I know what will happen. Don't you think I've dreamt about it for the last 8 years? He'll come in here and he'll take that gun away from you and then he'll do the shooting. By now, I figured out who they're talking about. And I guess you have too. None other than him, Killer Kane, my father. So in your plot, what are Grim and Graham doing? Michelle?
Having conflict.
Okay, but when we think of conflict, I want you to always focus on Max and Kevin. So you're right, but even in more simpler terms, what are Grim and Graham doing? They're fighting. Grim and Graham are having a fight. What's the fight over? Sophia?
Max's father, Killer Kane, and they're thinking that he's gonna come to the house.
But what are they fighting over?
The gun.
Getting a gun. Grim and Graham, in our plot, this is where it kind of picks up here, where it's around Christmas time, and Max over here is his grandparents fighting about whether or not they should get a gun to protect themselves from Killer Kane. Yes, Jocelyn?
I have like 4 guns.
This would be a kind of a place where you might be able to ask a level 3 question, where we take this idea of gun ownership and we pull it out, and we could ask a level 3 question on Kid Blog, something like, do you think it's a good idea to own guns? Explain. I don't want you to answer it. I'm giving you the example of the type of question that you could get from this. Maybe they won't let them out, Graham is saying. If they do, they'll give us protection. Sure they will, Grim says. Just like they protected our Annie. Who's Annie?
Freak's mother. Right.
Max's mom.
Max's mom. Max's mom.
So close.
Just like they protected our Annie. Next thing, Graham is crying. And you can tell Grim is trying to make her feel better. Going, there, my dear. I know. There. A while later, I hear the cellar stairs creaking. It's Grim, and he knocks on my door. Come on in. Grim comes inside, and for once, he doesn't tell me what a rat hole I'm living in, or how it smells like a locker room, because I forgot to put my socks in the hamper. He sits on the edge of the bed and folds his hands together. I never think about how old he is, because he never acts old. But tonight, he's all white and bent, and his skin is saggy. He's about 1,000 years old. That's a hyperbole. He's about 1,000 years old. Is Grim really 1,000 years old? No, yeah. All right. He's about 1,000 years old, and he says, I guess you heard the ruckus. Your grandma gets so upset, bless her heart. Can't abide the idea of violence. Can't say I blame her. Did he escape? I ask. Is that what happened? Grim shakes his head. He's up for parole. That's dumb. That's so dumb. Grim goes, you hit the nail on the head, son. What I did do, just so you know, I went into court and made it so that he won't be allowed within a mile of this house. If he does try to come here, they'll send him back to prison. The judge promised me that much. I say, maybe you should get a gun. Grim doesn't say anything for quite a while. Now, here's another spot, guys, where we could say a level 2 question. Do you think it's a good idea for Grim and Graham to... Yeah. All right. I think Jocelyn wants to take that question. All right. Grim doesn't say anything for quite a while. And then he goes, maybe I will, maybe I won't. I can't tell your grandma about it, though, and it breaks my heart to lie to her. That's one thing we've never done. I won't tell. Grim is quiet again, and then he stands up from my bed, and in his real old, tired voice, he says, everything's gonna be okay, Max. I'll make sure of it. But for the next few days, I want you to stay in the house. Promise me you'll do that. Cross my heart, I say. Cross my heart and hope to die. Okay, so, real short chapter. What's the main thing that's happening, though? Grim and Graham did what?
They had a conflict over getting the gun.
Right, they fought about getting the gun.
I didn't write down anything about Max or Kevin in this chapter because it doesn't really talk about that.
It doesn't, and in every chapter you might not, you know. But Max, what does Max say to Grim? He says, maybe you should get a gun. And that is telling us something, that Max is afraid of his father. He thinks Grim should get the gun for protection. So that's definitely something to consider. All right, Jocelyn.
I wasn't trying to answer the question before. I was just saying, you should get a gun. Like, more people should get a gun. But as long as you have, like, the right licenses and everything.
Sounds like you're talking about advocating for, just proper, safe gun ownership. Because it can clearly be done properly and safely. Like, if I was to ask you guys, how many people in here have guns in their house? Right. And do you guys, here's another question, do you guys think guns are safe or guns are unsafe?
Safe.
Okay, safe. Guns are both, they can be both.
It depends on how you use it.
Depends on how you use it.
They're safe if you respect them.
All right, they can be safe if you respect them.
I think they'll protect us. Like,
Okay.
we have.
Casey?
I think I have a hammer underneath my pillow.
Okay.
Yeah, my dad curved a bag.
Okay. You're interrupting. Okay. So that again about gun ownership and how we feel about it, we're pulling this idea out of the book, and now we're turning it into like a level 3 kind of conversation. All right, let's move right into chapter 15. Okay. What came down the chimney? What's supposed to come down the chimney? Santa is supposed to come down the chimney. All right, chapter 15. And if we don't finish it now, guys, I think what I want to do with you later is what I did with you yesterday in lunch. Allow you guys to eat and then just finish reading it. Because this, as I said, conflicts are really heating up. All right? The tension is really heating up. Chapter 15. So, keep using your same graphic organizer. What came down the chimney? Christmas Eve is real quiet. Like Freak says... You could hear a mouse fart, which even if it is a stupid joke, makes Grim smile and shake his head. Freak and the Fair Gwen have supper with us, and we're all trying to pretend like everything is normal, and nobody says a word about Killer Kane getting out of prison. The Fair Gwen is wearing this dark red silky blouse and a long black shirt that almost touches the floor, and her waist is so small she looks like one of those Christmas ornaments. The kind that makes a tingle bell sound when the branches move. Freak is all dressed up too. He's wearing this tweedy new suit jacket and that has patches on the elbows. And Grim says all he needs is a pipe and he'll look like quite the professor. No tobacco, Freak says. Nicotine is a toxic waste of time. Just the pipe, Grim insists. You don't have to smoke it. Page 94. Don't get him started on bad habits, Graham says. Maxwell, pass the mint sauce. Mint sauce is one of Graham's specialties, and you'd be amazed how it improves everything, which is why I've been keeping it close by. Anyhow, the food is the best. You can't beat Graham for Christmas, or Thanksgiving, or birthdays. And we all eat until we're fit to bust. Except the Fair Gwen makes sure Freak doesn't eat too fast. You'd think I was starving him, the Fair Gwen says. Please, sir, more gruel, he says, holding up his plate and making a funny face where his tongue sticks out sideways. And Graham laughs so hard she has a coughing fit, which makes us all shut up. After supper, we sit around like you do, admiring the tree and talking about how lucky we are not to be homeless. And Grim starts telling these old stories about when he was a kid and they got lumps of coal in their stockings. If we were lucky, we got an apple core, he says, or a few orange rinds. Now, Arthur, Graham says, you never got a lump of coal in your life. You're right. We never even got a lump of coal. Can you imagine? My father couldn't afford coal, so he'd write the word coal on a piece of paper and put it in our stockings, and we'd pretend it was a lump of coal. That's how poor we were. The Fair Gwen is laughing to herself and shaking her head. Graham says, how can you tell such lies on Christmas Eve? I'm telling tales, my dear, not lies. Lies are mean things, and tales are meant to entertain. And so we all sit there, acting polite and listening to Grim make up stuff no one would ever in a million years believe. And all of us have a cup of hot chocolate and a piece of Russell Stover candy right out of the box. And then it's time to pass around a few presents. Graham has this rule that you can open one on Christmas Eve, and you save the rest for morning, which can be tough, deciding what to open first. Grim always starts it off because, like he says, he's really a kid at heart and he can't stand to wait. From Graham, he gets this woolly sweater that buttons up the front, and he acts surprised, even though he's got about 100 just like it already. Then, Graham opens her present from me, which is a bracelet made of shells from beaches around the world. And she right away puts it on and says, it's just what she wanted, which is so like Graham. If you gave her an old beer can, she'd act pleased and say that it was just what she wanted. Then Freak opens his present from me, and even before he gets the paper all the way off, he gives me this thumbs up and says, "Cool!" It's a gizmo that looks like a jackknife, but really, it's a whole bunch of little screwdrivers and wrenches and even a little magnifying glass. I'm pretty sure Freak can invent stuff with it if he feels like it. We end at 10:09. Graham gives the fair Gwen this scarf that just happens to match her blouse. And everybody goes, ooh and ah. And then I finally decide what presents to open. Right away, you know it was something Freak did because the box isn't square. It's pointed at the top like a pyramid. And instead of regular wrapping paper, he's got Sunday comics taped all over it. And it's driving me nuts trying to figure out what would fit inside a pyramid-shaped box. Freak seems like he's just as excited as me, even as though he already knows what he put inside. "Take off all the paper first," he says. "There's a special way to open it." Real careful, I peel off all the paper. And the thing is, it's not a pyramid-shaped box he bought somewhere. He made it. You can see where he cut out the pieces of cardboard and taped them all together. And written on the sides of the pyramid are these little signs and arrows. "Follow the arrows," he says. The arrows point all over the place, and I have to keep turning the pyramid around until finally I get to this sign that says, "Press here and be amazed." "Go on," Freak says. "It's not an explosive device, silly. It won't blow up in your face." I press the spot on the pyramid, and all of a sudden, all four sides fold down at the same time. And I'm looking inside the pyramid, and just like Freak promised, I am amazed. "The young man is a genius," Grim is saying, and I don't use that word lightly. Grim is right about that, because Freak has the whole thing rigged with these elastic bands and paper clips, which is what the sides unfold all at the same time. And inside this little platform, and on the platform is a book. Not a normal book like you buy in the store, but a book he made himself. You can tell that right away. It looks so special. I'm afraid to pick it up or I might ruin it. What I did was take all my favorite words, Freak says, and put them in alphabetical order. Like a dictionary? Exactly, Freak says, but different, because this is my dictionary. Go on and look inside. I open the book in the way he asks, and the pages smell like a ballpoint pen. It starts with A, just like a regular dictionary. But as Freak said, it's different. A, aardvark, a silly-looking creature that eats ants. Arg, what the aardvark says when it eats ants. Abacus, a finger-powered computer. Abscissa, the horizontal truth. You don't have to read them all tonight, Freak says. Save some for tomorrow. I gotta tell you though, you're gonna flip when you see what I did with the Z's. This is the best. Getting Freak's dictionary. Everything else is extra. I figure it will take forever to fall asleep because my head is full of stuff. Grim and his written down lump of coal. The pyramid with the special book inside. And how fat, wet flakes of snow were falling when the fair Gwen towed Freak home in his American Flyer wagon. And the way he was pretending to boss her by saying, "On Donner, on Dasher, on Guinevere." And she's telling him to shut up or she'll leave him outside until he turns into a snowman. Which must be why I'm dreaming about a little snowman who looks like Freak. The snowman keeps saying, "Cool, cool." And when I wake up, I can feel the cold coming into my room. Which is weird, because it's always warm in the Down Under, with the furnace right next door. I think I hear the wind right there in my room. Except, it's not the wind. Someone's breathing. Someone who rises up darker than night, as big as the room, and puts a giant hand on my face and presses down. "Don't say a word, boy," he whispers. "Not a sound." I try to move, try to shrink myself back into the bed, but the hand follows me down, The hand is so hard and strong. I can't move. And it feels like my heart has stopped beating. It's waiting to see what will happen next. I came back, he says, like I promised. And that's where the chapter ends. Now, before I turn the camera off, before I end and let you guys finish completely your lunch, Casey, what's a safe inference we can make about who this is that just came into hit? I asked Casey. Killer Kane.
He said he promised to come back, and that's the only person who could have came. So we have a good inference.
So guys, remember, what night is this? What night of the year is this, Michelle? This is Christmas Eve. Imagine you're in your bedroom. You're going to sleep.
You're happy for tomorrow.
You're extremely happy because you just got these great presents. You had this great celebration. And you wake up. And in your bedroom, what do you hear?
Someone saying, I came back for you.
No, even before that. Jocelyn? You hear someone's breathing in your room. How creepy is that? How scary is that?
That's why it's stupid to live.
And then that hand comes over your face and says, don't say a word. I came back. Just like I promised. All right. And here we know, guys, earlier in that chapter, we know that Kevin and Max says that everything is great right up until Christmas break when all hell breaks loose. And we know that that means bad things are about to happen. Okay? And so the last thing I'll say this, Cheyenne, is this. All right? We've been introducing you guys. I've been introducing you guys to all these literary elements. We've been talking about plot. Okay? We're going to learn after the book, plot. It all leads up to this big climax. All right? Which is the most intense, scary part of the book for our main character. And at the end of this chapter, that's when it started, okay? Right now, from here on out for the next 2 to 3 chapters, Max is in the most intense part of the story. All right, so these next couple of chapters are going to be very, very exciting. And that's where we're going to end. So next week, we'll be reading the climax. All right, guys?